I'd just like to point out that there was an article about this in the last issue of the paper, dated January 21st. So take a look if you haven't read it already. Legal abortion is under attack as never before in its 43-year history. Last Friday, January 22nd, the Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion, Roe v. Wade, turned 43. As you well know, instead of being able to celebrate the vital role it has played in helping women gain agency, control, and power over their lives, and bettering the lives of their families, we must examine the sorry state of legal abortion in the U.S. In no other country where abortion is legal have 11 doctors and staff and others in clinics been murdered when providing or being in the vicinity of them. Since 2010, 400 anti-abortion laws have imposed draconian limitations on abortion. In 2015, 57 such laws curtailed access to medication abortions and imposed mandatory waiting periods and parental consent, among many other different kinds of restrictions. Who feels the burden of these limitations the most? Why, poor women. Disproportionately women of color, immigrants, homeless women, young women, victims of domestic violence and terrorism, women living in rural areas, and disabled women. And yes, the attacks are likely to continue in 2016. One major event this year is that for the first time in 25 years, the Supreme Court is hearing a case on abortion. The case, it's called Whole Women's Health versus Cole, was brought by women's health clinic providers in Texas against the law HB 2 that was passed by the Texas legislature in 2013. The law has two provisions that the clinics are contesting. One is that all clinics meet standards for ambulatory surgical centers. The other requires doctors performing abortions to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. While Texas officials say these provisions are needed to protect women's health, providers say they are expensive, unnecessary, and intended to put clinics out of business. In fact, the American Medical Association and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists assert that the provision to have ambulatory surgical centers is totally medically unnecessary. Providers note that running an ASC costs about $600,000 to $1 million more than running a current facility. The 62-page brief filed by the healthcare clinics on December 29th on behalf of 5 million women of childbearing age in Texas stated that the requirements are intended to reduce women's access to legal abortion. If the court upholds the two provisions, 75% of abortion facilities will close in the state and prevent new ones from opening. Already, over half are closed because of the admitting privileges requirement. The impact has already been dire, leading to an increase in abortions later in pregnancy or illegal or self-administered abortions. On January 5th, a dozen Latina health and civil rights advocates representing 2.5 million women of reproductive age in Texas, that's half the women of reproductive age in Texas are Latinas, filed a friend of the court brief supporting the provider's case. Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, executive director of the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health, stated that the effect of HB 2 on Latinas are, quote, direct, documented, and disproportionate. The burdens have created a de facto ban on abortion for Latinas. Only 17 out of 41 clinics are currently open. Lucy Felix of the Texas Latina Advocacy Network said the law has, quote, already have a devastating impact on Latinas in the Rio Grande Valley. For immigrants, mothers, low-wage workers, and Latinas who are all three, having an abortion means navigating a state-created obstacle course. Those unable to overcome these obstacles will be forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term or to take matters into their own hands. The nexus of the case hinges on the interpretation of the concept of undue burden, which Justice Sandra Day O'Connor originated in the 1992 ruling she authored in Planned Parenthood v. Casey. Any working and oppressed person knows that having to drive hundreds of miles to the nearest health care clinic to get a legal abortion poses a huge burden, especially if the woman has to lose 2 to 3 days of work, pay for gas, meals, a hotel room, and a babysitter on top of paying for the abortion. However, the Fifth Circuit Court ruled the two provisions do not impose an undue burden. How will the 9 justices on the Supreme Court rule? That depends on whether at least 5 of them take to heart the scores of friends of the court briefs that support the clinic's case and see through HB2's patronizing, hypocritical smokescreen of so-called protecting women to see how such provisions attack the very right to life of women that is the essence of Roe v. Wade. But how the court rules depends on the public, the social arena where the court of public opinion resides. Every poll that has been taken, particularly recently but throughout the history of Roe v. Wade, has shown that the majority of people in this country support legal, safe abortion for all women. But before abortion was legal, women and their supporters had to mobilize, and they need to do it again on March 2nd, which is the date when the Supreme Court will be hearing the case. They need to mobilize in the streets and on the campuses to demand women's right to control their own lives, which includes all the things needed to have and raise healthy children, as well as not have them. I don't have time to go into what constitutes reproductive rights, starting with comprehensive health care and sex education. But in the recent period, it has become unequivocal that reproductive rights includes an end to racism, where children are murdered in the streets because of the color of their skin. I'm happy to report that this year, because of the power of the Black Lives Matter movement and the conversion of cop murders and the killings at the Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, the movement for reproductive justice has become a central theme in the women's movement, and it's certainly about time. Yes, into the streets on March 2nd to demand what is women's birthright. Now, there was a surprising and amazing development this week that I really need to talk about very quickly, and I hope others will talk about it as well briefly. That is the indictment of 2 of the people behind the videos that tried to frame Planned Parenthood for selling fetal tissue for profit. The applause comes later. What's truly wonderful is that the grand jury in Houston, Texas, of all places, initially investigated Planned Parenthood. But it came to the conclusion that Planned Parenthood was blameless and it could not be charged. But the 2 videographers, David Dalenden and Sandra Merritt, could be charged with second-degree felonies involving tampering with government records. What they did was create phony driver's licenses in an attempt to defraud Planned Parenthood. And Deladin was charged with trying to procure human fetal tissue for pay. After all the hell that Planned Parenthood went through in 2015, domestic terrorism, including arson and murder, congressional hearings and federal laws trying to defund Planned Parenthood, investigations in dozens of states that ended up resulting in no charges, this turn of events has been an amazing reversal of fortune, but is not unexpected when you know what Planned Parenthood is and what it stands for. The struggle for women's full and complete rights, for true equality and justice for all women, is still a long way off, but we are determined to continue the fight until we break all of tradition's chains. Two quick things. One, today a bill was introduced in Congress called the Lilly Ledbetter Payroll Equity Bill, or something like Paycheck Equity Bill. Now, we hear all the time about attacks on abortion because they're in the news. But there are many other subtle ways that women are oppressed in our culture. And both the capitalists on both sides of the aisle contribute to the oppression of women. And one of the main ways that women are oppressed and that affects all families is that women are paid less than men. It's now, I've read two statistics. It's either women only make 79% or maybe it's 83%. But the important point is we're not getting the bucks that we deserve and earn every day. So I just had to throw that in because today's Lilly Ledbetter Paycheck Equity Bill Day. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say is that even though these two people were indicted for fraudulently presenting themselves and trying to finagle Planned Parenthood into proving that they were wrong and were selling baby parts, it's highly doubtful that these people will actually, in fact, serve 20 years in jail because they are supported by the right wing. Today, Cruz got a very important and amazing, in many ways, endorsement from the man who is the president of Operation Rescue and who is on the board of the Council for Medical Progress, which is the phony name of the organization that created the video. The guy's name is Trey Newman. This man is a total fascist. He totally supports domestic terrorism. He believes that everyone has the right to kill people who support and perform abortions. The man is just an outright criminal. And Cruz proudly announced today that he had this guy's endorsement. I mean, seriously. But this is the extent to which some of those Republican candidates are going in becoming more and more and more reactionary, and we need to be aware of it. I mean, it's one thing to indict the people who made that video, but to get the support of Troy Newman, it's another problem.